The wind hit the truck like a wall. Visibility dropped to 0 in seconds. Snow swallowed the highway whole. Inside the cab, the heater roared. Outside, the world disappeared. This is what a prairie blizzard really does. Not the highway footage you see online. Not the dramatic news clips. The real story happens inside the cab. Most people think the danger is the snow. They picture drifts piling up on the road. They imagine a truck sliding off the shoulder. That's the surface level fear. But that's not what actually kills drivers. The real danger is invisible. It's not what's outside the windshield. It's what's happening inside the driver's body. And inside the engine. And inside the electronics nobody thinks about. Here's the myth everyone believes. People think modern trucks are blizzard-proof. They think heated cabs solve everything. They think GPS and radar keep drivers safe. None of that is fully true. A blizzard on the Canadian prairies is different. This isn't mountain snow. This isn't coastal slush. This is flat, open, merciless terrain. Wind has nothing to slow it down. In Saskatchewan and southern Alberta, wind speeds during a blizzard can hit 90 km per hour. Combined with falling snow, this creates whiteout conditions in under 60 seconds. Drivers describe it as the roads simply vanishing. One moment you see lane markers. The next moment, you see nothing. Temperatures during prairie blizzards often crash to minus 35 degrees Celsius. With wind chill factored in, it can feel like minus 50. At that temperature, exposed skin can develop frostbite in under 10 minutes. That's not a highway problem. That's a survival problem. Inside the cab, the driver faces a different kind of stress. Their hands grip the wheel at a constant 10 and 2. Their eyes strain to find any visual reference point. A reflector post. A tail light. A road sign. Anything that proves the road still exists. Most blizzard accidents don't happen from speed. They happen from drivers losing spatial orientation. This is called whiteout vertigo. The brain loses its sense of up, down, and forward. Some drivers describe it as driving inside a ping-pong ball. Truck cabs are equipped with defrost systems rated for extreme cold. But during a prairie blizzard, ice can form on the inside of the windshield. This happens when warm, moist breath meets a windshield chilled from outside wind. Drivers have to scrape ice from the inside of their own cab, while still moving forward at reduced speed. Diesel engines face their own crisis in these conditions. Standard diesel fuel begins to gel around minus 15 degrees Celsius. Without proper additives, paraffin wax crystals form inside the fuel lines. This clogs filters and starves the engine of fuel. A truck can stall in the middle of nowhere, engine refusing to restart. That's why Canadian trucking companies switch to winter blend diesel. This blend is treated with anti-gel additives. It can resist freezing down to minus 40 degrees Celsius. But not every fuel stop carries it. Drivers sometimes gamble on finding the right pump in time. Battery performance becomes another silent threat once temperatures fall this far. A standard truck battery loses roughly 40% of its starting power once the mercury drops to minus 30 Celsius. Combine that with the extra electrical load from heaters, defrosters, and cab electronics, and a battery that worked fine yesterday can suddenly fail to turn the engine over at all. Drivers who shut down for a rest stop in a blizzard sometimes return to a truck that simply won't start. In a place where the next service station might be 80 or 100 kilometers away, that's not an inconvenience. That's a genuine emergency. This is why so many long-haul drivers on the prairies choose to idle through the worst of a storm rather than shut down completely. Idling keeps the engine block warm, keeps the fuel from gelling, and keeps the battery from draining in the cold. But idling isn't free. A long-haul truck burns somewhere between 3 and 4 liters of diesel per hour just idling in place. Over a 12-hour blizzard shutdown, that can add up to 40 or 50 liters of fuel, costing drivers 60 to 80 Canadian dollars, just to stay alive and keep the truck operational. Multiply that across a fleet of trucks parked along the Trans-Canada Highway during a major storm system, and the costs climb into the thousands within a single night. Inside the cab, the air itself becomes part of the danger. Idling for extended periods in extreme cold means drivers often keep windows sealed tight to preserve heat. Carbon monoxide can build up if exhaust systems aren't functioning properly, especially in older trucks or ones with worn seals. Experienced drivers know to crack a window slightly, even in -40 weather, just to keep fresh air cycling through the cab. It's a small detail most people watching highway footage would never think about, but it's one that veteran drivers treat as a non-negotiable habit. Communication becomes another layer of the story. CB radios crackle with chatter during a prairie blizzard, drivers warning each other about jackknifed trailers, stalled vehicles, and sections of highway that have been closed by provincial authorities. In Saskatchewan and Alberta, highway crews use a system of road condition reports updated multiple times per hour during severe storms. Drivers rely on this information almost like a lifeline, because GPS systems cannot account for whiteout conditions or sudden closures. A road that was open 30 minutes ago might now be gated off, with RCMP cruisers blocking entry points to prevent vehicles from driving into zero visibility zones. Then there's the physical toll on the driver's body. Sitting in a stationary, idling truck for 10 or 12 hours during a storm shutdown isn't restful. The constant engine vibration, the dry heat, and the psychological stress of being stranded all compound fatigue. Studies on long-haul driver health have shown that prolonged exposure to engine noise and vibration during shutdowns contributes to elevated cortisol levels, the body's primary stress hormone. In other words, a driver waiting out a blizzard isn't relaxing. Their body is still in a low-level survival state, even while parked. Visibility tools inside modern trucks have improved, but they have limits the public rarely hears about. Infrared and thermal assist cameras, now installed in some newer fleet trucks, can help drivers detect heat signatures of stalled vehicles or wildlife on the road ahead. But in a true whiteout, even these systems struggle, because falling snow scatters infrared signals almost as effectively as it blocks visible light. Drivers can't rely on technology alone. Decades of accumulated instinct and route familiarity often matter more than any sensor mounted on the dashboard. Provincial trucking regulations also shape what happens inside the cab during a storm. Both Saskatchewan and Alberta enforce hours of service rules, but most provinces include exceptions for adverse driving conditions, allowing drivers extra time to find safe parking without violating mandatory rest regulations. This sounds like a small bureaucratic detail, but for a driver caught in a sudden prairie whiteout 40 minutes from the nearest truck stop, that legal flexibility can mean the difference between pulling over safely and feeling pressured to keep driving into worsening conditions just to stay compliant on paper. Convoy driving becomes common during the worst stretches. Experienced drivers will deliberately slow down and form a loose chain with other trucks, following taillights as a visual anchor point when the road itself becomes invisible. This isn't officially coordinated. It's an unspoken trucking culture, drivers looking out for each other because dispatchers and GPS systems simply cannot see what's happening on the ground in real time. Veteran drivers describe spotting a single set of taillights ahead during a whiteout as one of the most reassuring sights in the entire industry, a small proof that you are not alone out there. The deep facts close out with one final piece most people never consider: recovery after the storm. When a prairie blizzard finally breaks, highway crews don't simply reopen the road. Plows have to clear snowdrifts that can pile 3 to 4 meters high against guardrails and embankments. Tow operators, often working in pairs for safety, have to dig out jackknifed trailers and stalled vehicles buried under fresh drifts. In extreme cases, recovery operations along stretches of the Trans-Canada Highway have taken 12 to 18 hours after a storm passes, meaning drivers who survive the blizzard itself still face a full day of waiting before the road is declared safe again. The danger doesn't end when the wind stops. It just changes shape. And here's the twist almost nobody talks about. The most dangerous moment in a prairie blizzard isn't during the worst of the storm. It's in the 30 minutes right after it starts to clear. Visibility improves just enough that drivers feel confident again. They speed up. They relax their grip. But the road surface beneath them is often at its most treacherous point, a thin, deceptive layer of black ice forming as temperatures shift and freshly packed snow begins to glaze over. Experienced drivers call it the false calm. It's the moment confidence returns before the road has actually become safe, and it's responsible for a disproportionate number of accidents compared to the peak of the storm itself. There's something almost human about that detail. The storm itself, brutal as it is, comes with adrenaline and full attention. Drivers are locked in, hyper-aware, treating every second with the seriousness it deserves. But it's in the quiet aftermath, when the wind finally settles and the snow stops swirling, that the guard comes down just a little too soon. It's a reminder that the most dangerous moments in life aren't always the loudest ones. Sometimes they're the quiet ones right after, when everyone exhales too early. Behind every one of these numbers is a person. A driver, hundreds of kilometers from home, sitting alone in a cab while the entire world outside turns white. Families waiting for a check-in call that might be delayed by hours because cell service drops out in the worst stretches of the prairies. A driver's job isn't just about hauling freight from one province to another. It's about quietly absorbing risk that most people will never see, never think about, and never thank them for. The trucking industry runs on these moments, on people willing to sit inside that roaring heater, watching the wipers fight a losing battle, trusting their training and their instincts to get them through one more storm. That's the part of trucking nobody puts in the brochure. Not the romanticized open road. Not the freedom of the highway. The real story is grit. It's a driver checking their mirrors for the 100th time, easing off the throttle just slightly more, trusting years of experience over fear. It's choosing to idle through the night rather than risk the unknown. It's the quiet decision-making that never makes it into a highlight reel but keeps thousands of trucks, and the goods inside them, moving safely across some of the harshest terrain in the world. So next time you see a truck rolling steady through a snowstorm on the prairies, remember what's actually happening inside that cab. It's not simple. It's not easy. And it's definitely not boring. If this gave you a new respect for what these drivers go through, drop a comment and let me know which details surprised you the most. Hit that like button if you learned something today, and if you want more real stories from inside the trucking world, make sure you're subscribed, because we're just getting started.